So good evening, I'm Leanne Camara, the CEO of the New Bedford Light. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you and an honor to be part of the work of nonprofit local journalism. That work wouldn't exist in the New Bedford area without your support, so thank you. Journalism at its core is a public service. It's about asking questions that matter, reporting the facts, sharing information that people can act on, opening up conversations, and connecting people. And that work is so essential right now. We all benefit when there is access to trustworthy, fair, and accurate information. And it's your support that makes it possible. Because of you, we've been able to help the South Coast community navigate complex issues. From what's at stake in elections to how the evolving offshore wind industry is reshaping our local economy, and to the human impact of shifting immigration practices, including today's in-depth 5-part series on how those changes are upending the lives of families and neighbors here. You have also helped people stay informed about the school budget process, drawing record attendance to public meetings. You have educated homeowners on how to test their wells for harmful chemicals. You have helped the community monitor the health of the bay. You have also brought attention to how actions by the administration, including the firing of NOAA scientists, are impacting the South Coast fishing community. You have provided space for local voices and public dialogue, and you have elevated local arts and culture in ways that build community pride. Thanks to you, the Light is also seen as a model in the growing nonprofit journalism movement. Other organizations come to us to learn how to build a newsroom from the ground up, a sign that what we are building here together is both needed and inspiring. We have an impressive speaking program tonight, and I won't keep you from it much longer, but before I turn over the microphone, please allow me to briefly recognize a few key individuals. To our founders, especially Ken Hartnett. We always get the loudest applause, actually, every year. So to our founders, and especially Ken Hartnett, your early vision laid the groundwork for what the Light has become. To our board of directors, thank you for your steady leadership in championing independent journalism. To our advisory council and committee members, your willingness to represent and support us makes a real difference. And to our staff, including those who helped pull together this event this evening, and our editor, Karen Bordelot, and the entire newsroom team, your dedication and talent are what bring our mission to life every day. And it's funny that our reporters have fan clubs within the crowd. Some of you have talked to me about, oh, I love this reporter, introduce me. It's very funny. We're also grateful to our event sponsors. They are Berry Investment Advisors, Luzo Auto, and Skips Marine. Thank you. And to our year-end sponsors, Tonix Pharmaceuticals and Landvest, as well as the many foundations and individual donors for their ongoing support, thank you. Without you, there would be no Light. And a very special message to our leading event sponsor, Serve Well Hospitality, the Silverstein family, For 4 years in a row, you have gone above and beyond to make this event a success. We are incredibly grateful. A few housekeeping announcements. We have two silent auction items. One is a piece of artwork from Thomas Lynch Gallery, and also a boat trip for up to 4 people for Steve Taylor, from Steve Taylor, by Steve Taylor. The silent auction table is on the other side of the deck if you want to swing by and take a look. Also, just so everyone knows, the food and the conversation will continue after the speaking program, so we would love for you to stick around. Before Steve Silverstein shares his remarks, I want to thank you once more. People are getting credible reporting they need to make informed decisions about their schools, their health, the environment, and their future. That's the role we play, and that's what you make possible. So thank you.
Thank you, Leanne. I've had so many warm greetings tonight and so much thanks. The truth is, we're very thankful to you, and the round of applause was incredible. This may not be the best of my 4 speeches because I have a little problem in that I forgot my speech at home. But this is my lucky day because I hadn't worn this blazer since last year, and I have last year's speech in my pocket. So if you remember some of what I had to say last year, then good for you. But anyway, so I'll try to ad-lib and update it from last year, but here we go. My wife Judy, who is here with the green dress. My son Will, who is working very hard tonight. And of course my Snowbell hospitality team. We now have almost 800 team members. Keep in mind I retired in 2018, and here we are. But it's an addiction that I admit to, and I'm not in a hurry to cure it. So we're very honored for this to be our 4th year doing this. It's a proud day for us. And when John Bullard 4 years ago asked me to do this, I kind of grudgingly, but John's such a sweet guy and one of my favorite people, we did this. But the truth is that it was a really proud day and one of the greatest days of the year for us to be with you all and to feel such warmth. As you may know, the Silversteins have been in New Bedford for 125 years. My son Will is the 5th generation. He now has a little boy, and we're hopeful that he'll be the 6th generation in Bedford. That's something that we're very proud of. My great grandfather started Silversteins from a push cart on South Water Street, and if anybody can recall those days, which I don't think, but South Water Street was the high street of New Bedford. And I remember my dad telling me that someday we'd be lucky enough to move downtown like salt marshes. Wouldn't that be great? So a lot's happened over the years, and we continue to invest in New Bedford because we believe in New Bedford. I love when I travel, people say, where are you from? I always say I'm from New Bedford. And they're like, wow, New Bedford, isn't that kind of a tough place? And I said, you have no clue on what's going on in New Bedford. It's such a great place. And now more than ever, we can not only feel the momentum, but we can see the momentum. And sometimes you don't see what's going on in front of your face, but just think about what's happening. I had the great opportunity to tour the Zeiterion Theater on Monday night. I was blown away with the scale of that project. 36 million. It's unbelievable. it's an asset for this city and all the rooms they created and all the public events that could be hosted there. I was blown away by that. The train, wind, the whale museum expansion, the housing, the state pier development. If we have some time, we can talk about that a little bit. No, I'm only kidding. The Star Store, arts, education, and of course, the restaurant scene has been transformed. So. New Bedford's such a great place. It has depth and complexity. It's been dealt a difficult hand multiple times, but there's undeniable progress and the future looks so bright. I particularly love the many stories of the triumphs of this immigrant community. That really resonates with me. Our growth and success are due to the wonderful support we receive from you and so many others from this area who prove time and time again that believing in New Bedford is the smart thing to do. We're delighted to host this gala because we believe in the New Bedford Light, where we see the same excellence of service to the community and commitment to a long-term vision. To be successful in business, you need to have a great imagination and be willing to take risks. It's very hard for me to imagine what this region would be like without good local journalism. Who would help us understand what's really going on in this place we call home, not just sports scores and obits, but what are the issues this region faces, with facts and depth so we can really comprehend the situation. Without the light, who would hold us accountable? Not just government, but industries like fishing, healthcare, housing, offshore wind, and yes, the hospitality business. Without the light exploring these issues, we'd be getting our news from social media and whatever the latest rumors are that are flying around the street corners and bars. And while I have nothing against bars, it's not a place I recommend you get your news from. You don't understand New Bedford in a day or a week or a year. You may not get New Bedford in a lifetime, but you have a much better chance to get New Bedford if you get the light. Thank you very much.
We are thrilled to have Steve Engelberg as our guest speaker. Steve has helped shape a leading nonprofit newsroom, ProPublica, to be a vital force in journalism. Special thanks to our board member, Walter Robinson, also known as Robbie, for inviting Steve here. And I'm going to turn it over to Robbie to give Steve a proper introduction.
Ken Hartnett is still my idol. I hate to repeat Steve Silverstein, who is my other idol, but I left my introductory remarks at home. But I happen to have the same jacket on that I had last year when I introduced Marty Babb. And, you know, to me, there are two great editors in American journalism, Marty and Steve Engelberg. And I have to say, only one of them, Steve, is still working. So, I did leave my reading glasses at home. But, do not think for a minute that tonight's speaker needed a GPS to find New Bedford. Steve Engelberg, as maybe some of you know, grew up in Lexington. He may even sound like some of us. As you may know, Steve also has more than a passing familiarity with the Light's journalism. 3 years ago, ProPublica helped make possible the Light's extraordinary story about foreign ownership and exploitation of New Bedford's fishing fleet. By the way, also here tonight is Dan Golden, the ProPublica editor at the time, who had the biggest hand for ProPublica in helping get that story done. And Dan, a former colleague of mine at the Globe, is one of the best reporters on the planet. And I'm shocked that you took up editing, but. Back in 2008, the trend lines in American journalism were all downward. Newsrooms everywhere were shrinking, and too many editors concluded that investigative reporting was a luxury they could no longer afford. But the visionaries behind ProPublica decided otherwise, that investigative reporting was a necessity we could not afford to do without. That year, a staff of about 40 began work in New York under the name ProPublica, under the tutelage of managing editor Steve Engelberg. 17 years later, the last 12 under editor-in-chief Engelberg, ProPublica's staff has grown to over 200. It is a major force in American journalism. Some would say, some who value investigative reporting, it is the major force in American journalism. It is the first nonprofit news site to win a Pulitzer Prize for stories it did just a year after its creation. Altogether, ProPublica, in its short history, has won the Pulitzer Prize 8 times. Both last year and this year, it was awarded the Gold Medal for Public Service, the Pulitzer's highest honor. It has been a Pulitzer finalist 12 other times. Of particular note, half of those awards have been joint projects with other newsrooms. ProPublica doesn't just do great journalism, it makes extraordinary journalism possible in every state. ProPublica has 6 regional bureaus around the country. Since 2018, its local reporting network has made possible hundreds of investigative projects around the country. Their partnership with the Light is but one sterling example of that. At the helm is a visionary editor with uncanny ability to attract the country's best investigative reporters and editors. Steve is no novice in this. In 18 years at the New York Times, he won numerous awards for his own reporting and editing. He was also the first editor of the Times investigative unit. And I may have mentioned he's also a local kid. Steve?
I don't know if it's possible to live up to that introduction. Thank you, Robbie, and thank you, Steve Silverstein, for hosting this event. It's really quite something. Hold on. I thought I would talk a little bit tonight about sort of how we got here, where we are, and where we might be going. And I'd like to keep my remarks relatively short so that we can have a spirited conversation, since, clearly what this turnout proves tonight is that people are interested in talking about journalism, thinking about it, worrying about it, and there's a lot to worry about. Robbie alluded to the 2008 founding of ProPublica by Herb and Marion Sandler, and their viewpoint at the time was not only, that investigative reporting was needed and that there wasn't enough of it, but they saw, I think, presciently, the threat to the business model. Right now, here we are, 2025, Robbie's, I guess you're sort of retired, although I think you probably still are having people write stories and do things. You're never really retired. Dan Golden here is reportedly retired, and I hear from him all the time about stories he's working on. So clearly none of us get away from it. But what I think they foresaw more presciently than most was that the business model was going to be broken by the internet. And this was a sort of strange thing in the business, because in the initial days or hours of it, let's say in the late 1990s, when the internet first appeared, everybody said newspapers were going to be destroyed, and then they weren't. And we all said, oh, well, it's not so bad. We can deal with this. I mean, you put some stuff on the online, and remember the AOL and the, you got mail. Oh, that seemed all fine. I mean, we can deal with this. I do remember at one point at the Oregonian, where I worked for 5 years, we'd been dogging this particular government agency. This is about 2004 or 5. And the reporter came over to me at about 12 noon, and he said, they've just admitted we're totally right about everything. They put out a report. And I said, that's amazing. So, and he says, and he gets up, and I said, where are you going? He said, I'm going to lunch. I said, you're putting it on the internet, right? You're kidding me, right? You're not going. He said, I'm hungry. I said, no. We don't do that. So we thought we could adjust to this thing. But over time, certainly I would say this is true of myself, and maybe true of the other former editors and reporters here, as a newspaper man or woman, it was kind of like the money came from somewhere. There was the business side. And then there was us, and the money fell from trees or from the sky or somewhere, and there it was. And every year there was a bit more of it, and things were good. And none of us really understood what the business model of American journalism was, and by the way, therefore, the bedrock of American democracy. American democracy. This theorizes, right? Our system is built that at every level of government, an informed citizenry will cast votes that will pick a better society. People look at investigative reporters like Robbie and myself and say, well, cynics, they gotta be cynics. They're always looking at the worst parts of society, right? So they think everybody's terrible. No, we are optimists, because every day an investigative reporter gets up and believes that if people only knew the truth, they would demand a better society. That's what ProPublica is built on. Now I see some smiles out there. They're saying, well, wait a minute, is that really possible? But it has to be possible. If that's not possible, I don't know how democracy works. And so the bulwark of democracy really was, back in the day, a couple of different things. But first, at least at the Oregonian, I would say, it was the classified ad. 50% of the revenue of the Oregonian came from jobs classifieds, people selling stuff, selling cars, whatnot. And it was the greatest business ever. You want to sell your car? First of all, you type the damn ad. We don't have time for that stuff. What are we going to charge you? I don't know, $200 for 3 days. You don't like it? What are you going to do? Monopoly. We were a monopoly, and that was the greatest thing ever. And it turned out to be actually pretty decent for democracy, right? You could get a lot of newspapers, and they were pretty fat and happy. They could even have small investigative units. They could have lots of people. They could cover every meeting. The classified ad, 50%. The other 50% was display advertising, and that was premised on the following idea, which is, you own a department store, you want to sell 10 couches this weekend, how about you reach 100,000 readers? We will charge you for every reader that you're reaching. None of them want to buy a couch. What is this? This is so great. So between display advertising and classified advertising, it was magic. Well, the internet comes in, and this is what the Sanders began to see in 08, and we all began to see in 9 and 10 and 11 and 12. What would happen if somebody had all the data in the world and knew the 10 people who were searching for couches on the internet? Well, then you pay for those 10 people and no more. The internet turned out to be a ruthlessly efficient advertising dispersal device. So advertising is dead. And, you know, unfortunately, it isn't coming back. I mean, we got to be honest here. It is not coming back. It's not coming back with the Bedford Light. It's not coming back for ProPublica. Someone was asking me earlier in the evening, does ProPublica do online advertising? You know, I hear the Light does not. Is that correct? You guys take it? Don't take it?
Correct.
Okay, so ProPublica takes online advertising, and with our many millions of readers, it's like $300,000 a year for millions and millions and millions of readers. You know, there was a point at which, when I was at ProPublica, we had a wonderful business manager, and in year 2 I said, well, how big would it have to get? How much traffic would I have to attract to have some real ad revenue? And he said 10 million a year, or whatever the number was. So we got to 10 million, and I said, well, we did it. So how much, when does the money start rolling in? He said, oh, they moved the goal lines, it's now 100 million. And the goal lines have never stopped moving. You know, there are an infinite number of places to put ads, and the demand is what it is, and so you know how that works. And so the price of an internet ad is 1/100 of a penny or whatever it is, it's gone. So now we live in an era where you have to make your point for journalism by persuading people to either give you money or subscribe. And that is a game I don't mind being in, right? I mean, that feels okay. Like if we can just do great work, right? We're going to get readers, we're going to get donors, it's going to work. Turns out not to be that simple. And here I'd like to stop and throw out a phrase from my youth and some of the other people's youth here in the journalism business. Remember that thing people used to say, never get in a fight with people who buy ink by the barrel. That was a saying, okay? That actually has a lot embedded in it. That, first of all, tells you the monopoly thing, right? There are huge barriers to entry in the journalism business. If you can't buy a printing press, you can't have a paper. There are very few papers. The papers that exist, you know, are licenses to print money. Well, in today's environment, the good news and the bad news is that every man and woman is a publisher. So it turns out that if everybody can write a Substack, start their own micro news site, we have a problem. If you happen to watch, and if you didn't, I urge you to catch it, I'm sure it must be on tape somewhere, the Good Night and Good Luck, the George Clooney thing about Edward R. Murrow. There was a sort of notion at that time that if you lost Edward R. Murrow, that was spoken of McCarthy, later on of Vietnam, if you lost Walter Cronkite, the tide was going to turn. There were a small number of outlets, people who bought ink by the barrel, and public opinion could be massively moved if you lost 1 or 2 or 3 of them. The good news about the internet, it has democratized the news. It has given more people, more voices, access. You don't have to buy ink by the barrel anymore. That's great news. It's also a disaster. Because now, on some level, everybody's opinion seems to have comparable weight. And on top of that, you have another big development, how we got here, which is in the Edward R. Murrow play, you may remember there's a talk of, you know, this sort of crazy idea for the younger people here. It used to be on television, if you said something, the other side was entitled by law to get equal time. This was an actual written down thing. Even with our First Amendment, there was a sort of, not a limit on speech, but an addition. If you were on a network program, because the networks got their bandwidth from the government, so it's a monopoly, you know, you were paying for it. The price of getting that monopoly was giving equal time. So that disappears, and along comes Fox, and Fox says, we can make a commercial venture out of having narrowcasting, or more narrowcasting. And so they begin to pioneer a very successful commercial venture in which you have basically one kind of opinion on the network. The equal time thing goes away in about 1988 under Reagan, and so now we've opened a Pandora's box. And the internet turns out to be the absolutely ultimate tool for narrowcasting. Whatever your opinions are, you're a libertarian who believes in LGBTQ plus rights, we got you. You know, you're a libertarian who hates those rights, we got you too. There's a place for everybody to be surrounded in that warm bath of people who agree with you. That has turned out to be disastrous for journalism, disastrous for democracy, and at least from my personal observation of the world of the internet, the one thing the internet never does is go backwards to where we were before. We will go to something else, maybe it'll evolve, but we are not going back to a day where if you lost Cronkite or you lost Edward R. Murrow, something changed. And my proof of this, by the way, if you haven't seen this clip, it's worth searching for. There is an amazing rant right now making circulation on social media and the internet in which Joe Rogan opines about immigration. And Joe Rogan hates what they're doing right now. I can't quote it because every second word is a word you can't really say in a polite company, but he basically says, what the F are we doing? This is terrible, we're taking children from mothers, that's effing crazy, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought, oh my God, they've lost Joe Rogan. Anything changed, right? I mean, no. You can lose Joe Rogan. There's no one voice, which again is on some level liberating for the democracy, and in some ways terrifying. So, what is to be done? Well, what is to be done where communities can do it is what you've done right here in New Bedford, which is amazing. I was really, really, really amazing. Because, and I know this not just because I'm in nonprofit journalism at the high and mighty national ProPublica, but because I live in the town of Montclair, New Jersey, where for the last 5 years I've been on the board of the Montclair Local, and we are scraping and clawing and trying, and we're nowhere near as big or successful as the New Bedford Light. So I can tell you from personal experience, this is hard. To mobilize the community, to get all these people to come out and believe, to contribute, to support. It is just amazingly uphill work, and you've done it. Now, the silver lining in all this, and it is a silver lining, is that in nonprofit journalism, there is a relationship between quality and economic outcome. What do I mean? When I was at the Oregonian, after 2 years there, the editor-in-chief said to me, Steve, Sunday paper's flagging. We're down from 450 to 425. I want you to take it over, spruce it up. And boy, did I work hard. I mean, I'm an investigative kind of guy, so we had investigative stories. We had feature stories. We had great pictures. End of the year, circulation hits 399. And so I said to Sandy Rowe, I said, I failed. She said, no, without you, it would be 375. So, yeah. In the nonprofit world, when you do great work, you get more subscribers, you get more people who give money, you get more donors. ProPublica has consistently seen a rise in our revenue correlated with stories like the work we did on Clarence Thomas. And that has to feel good. I mean, as hard as all this is, at least there is some correlation between the quality of the work and the way things are going. And one of the most dismal things about newspapers as they collapsed is a lot of them are still doing very good work. By the way, just as an aside, you know, I was pointing this out to one of my colleagues, and at least this is, I think, very much agreed in the business. There are a number of people who canceled their Washington Post subscription because they're angry at Jeff Bezos. That's true. I'm personally against that, and I will tell you, for everything that is happening right now, smaller newsroom, everybody mad at Jeff Bezos, layoffs, the Washington Post is doing a very good job right now on the story of Donald Trump in America. They are. And they're laying people off because the revenue is going down. Which is, you know, for that staff to keep up their spirits, I think that's really hard. So we are in this nonprofit space. We're blessed. It is a wonderful thing. And I would love to just take some questions from you folks. I'm sure I'm happy to answer questions about the history of ProPublica, what's doing today, what might happen tomorrow, right there.
I'm concerned with what's going on, and do you expect an attack from the administration to shut you down?
Yeah, I will say this is a question that I get asked about once a day, and sometimes in nightmares I wake up thinking it. Our board just asked this question. You know, I like to think of, forgotten the name of the movie, Steve Spielberg made a movie about a lawyer who is trying to negotiate the release of a German spy. Was it Bridge of Spies, I think? Anyway, the plot is this guy is a total spy, and he gets caught by the Americans, and the penalty for being caught, he's not a diplomat, is execution. And so they're trying to like negotiate this swap, and the lawyer, who's played by Tom Hanks, keeps saying to the guy, I don't understand, why aren't you worried? And finally the German guy turns to him and says, I don't know, would it help? And that's kind of the scene that I come back to. I mean, yes, we have seen unprecedented things. We have seen things that we would never expect to see in America. We had a president say not only is he going to have a military parade, but that if you dare to, I don't know, stand on the corner with a peace sign silently, you are going to be met with large force. This is unimaginable. So to say that I can't picture a moment where they revoke our nonprofit status or sue us for $1 billion or, I don't know, seize the files. I mean, if you think about it for half a second, you can think of 6 ridiculous things that could happen tomorrow and they would all be credible the minute they happen. I hope that it doesn't come to that. I do think there is, and I think they sense this, a certain amount of support for media, both public and non-public. It's one thing to try to claw back money from NPR. I think it's another thing to shut down NPR. I would like to think that that is a bridge too far that people, you know, wouldn't necessarily stand for it. But let's be clear. I mean, what is journalism going to do here? We're going to continue to bring forward documented facts. We're going to show our work. We're going to say, if you want to know why we said this, here's the document, here's the video, here's the thing. A percentage of our fellow citizens are going to disregard that. But every election so far has been very, very close. And so, you know, you don't need 50% of the American people to entirely change their mind about reality. It's really the 1 or 2% that decide every election. I will say to you that, you know, just watching the other day, as I'm sure many of us have, having somebody say, I am Senator Alex Padilla, I have a question, and then to have the government announce that he never said that, no matter what who are you going to believe, you know, me or your lying eyes and ears? I mean, okay, so obviously anything is possible, but I do hope that we're not there yet.
That was just a beautiful statement about where the process will come as a result of the internet. I often think about the flip side of that in terms of our processes of government and democracy. In that it seems like we're now an old car. The carburetor is broken, but they now have this new fancy thing that's going to speed everything up, except that the legislative process, the judicial process, the political process can't keep up with the internet. So it's why I think investigative reporting is all the more important. But you know, is it a finger in the dam? Where are we going to go?
Growing up in New England, as I did, of course I'm a Red Sox fan, baseball fan of the highest order. Totally against the Raffy Devers trade, don't know what they're thinking. But anyway, in baseball, it's an amazing thing. The players run faster than they've ever run. And they throw harder than they've ever run. And yet, a ground ball to shortstop at a certain velocity is the same double play it was in Babe Ruth's days. When I'm optimistic, I feel like our democracy can do this. That we can pull this off, and the game, though played at a different speed and in different ways with different strategies and more data-driven stuff, is nonetheless more or less the game. If Babe Ruth were to come and sit down, he would, you know, kind of sort of recognize what it was and what it did. But I don't disagree with you. I think the advent of the internet, the ability of people to segregate themselves into these bubbles of, you know, sort of self-agreement and self-sorting is an existential threat to democracy. And when you combine that with the demise of local reporting in so many places, it's a tall order, you know. But, you know, I was just watching yesterday, the Bang Bang plays are still outs when they should be, and they're safe when they should be. So I hope we can pull that off with our Constitution. A little more is at stake, so.
Under 30 years old, we're totally addicted to social media. People who are looking at influencers for what's going on each day. How do people like ProPublica and legitimate investigative news people actually get their attention and keep their attention from all the algorithms from social media that's drawing them into really split, you know, such finely divided interest groups?
For me, the starting point has to be, and I think back on this, you know, as a newspaper person, I've seen this movie before, right? This is the story of the advent of the internet, which is to say, I remember at the Oregonian seeing a readership survey, and you know, young people don't read the paper, middle-aged people sort of read the paper, but 80 and up, 90% penetration. And I said, I've got the solution. Immortality. We just keep them alive forever, and as people become 80, we're going to be at 90%. Okay, didn't work out. So we have to do better than the newspapers did, and I think, at least for ProPublica, we are watching this very carefully. We have now 4 people doing social videos like TikTok and so on. We had 0 4 years ago. The point of investigative reporting is to have findings. The goal of the work that we do as journalists is to get those findings to people's heads. How do we do that? We can write a beautiful 5,000-word story. We can do a video. We can go on Joe Rogan if he'll have us, you know? Why not? We can collaborate with NPR. We can collaborate with Fox. We can do a podcast. Whatever it is, we have to take those findings, which is why we do this, and get them to people where they are, not where we would like them to be. And, you know, who knows, maybe reading will make a comeback. You know, vinyl records was dead, and now look, they sold more vinyl records last year than ever, so who knows? Maybe long stories will make a comeback.
Thank you, Steve. And if anyone else has additional questions, Steve will be hanging out after the speaking program, so please feel free to reach out to him and ask your question. Thank you.